If any of you had told me that starting a food series would have eventually led me to becoming a food tour guide, I would tell you that you're a bit cray cray, but that is what happened to me, y'all. I'm not a food tour guide. I got trained this summer and I want to tell you all about it in this video. What up, everyone? CharisMaggie here, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome, a huge welcome to you. On this channel, I do cultural education related content around food, language, and cultural history. So for today, I want to talk about my experience with the Culinary Everywhere program that I did this summer. And it was basically a food tour training program. And because I had a lot of people who asked me questions about it, I want to share the experience so that if any of you want to sign up, should they have another one, you would have an idea of what it was like. So here is how it went. All right, so if everyone remembers how during the pandemic we were all like stuck inside, eating away, watching Netflix, binge watching series, whatever the case might be, I was one of those people who were like binge watching food related series. So I'm talking about Somebody Feed Phil, Iron Chef. There was High on the Hog that came out during that time as well. There were like a bunch of food series, but like those in particular, I can think of High on the Hog and Someone Feed Phil. I just admired like everything about it because I felt like it was talking about food, but not just food, but they were like going to different countries, getting to experience it. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to experience that. But at the same time, I was like, but I'm broke. I don't got no money. How am I going to, travel to all these countries and do all these great things with food? And so, if I'm being honest with you, the series actually got created by mistake, I would say. Like, it was off a whim. I honestly didn't know if I was going to turn it into a food series. So, what I did was during the summer, I dedicated that I was going to be treating myself by going to restaurants, eating, bring my camera with me, get a few shots, and then if I like it, I will turn it into something for YouTube. And so I ended up going to I would say four different restaurants, and I featured two caterers. And yeah, it was literally like that's literally how it started, y'all. And so this series, I was able to feature six different countries. So we're talking Haiti, Nigeria, Brazil, Mexico, the Netherlands, and there's one more. Oh, Hungary. So six different countries, I was able to find restaurants that showcase them in one city. Like, it was just incredible to me that Toronto had so much diversity like in one spot. And that's also why I call the series Kitchens of Toronto. I knew that I would be very limited in terms of transportation. I would only be using public transportation to go from my house to the restaurants and all of that. So I felt it was fitting. So now fast forward to this summer, I had a friend who sent me a DM because we met during online, interaction. I can't remember how I actually started talking to her, but we connected in some way online. So her name is Tokes. She has a podcast called Tokes Talk. And she basically sent me a DM and she's like, I think you would be great for this program. And so I clicked on it and it was a flyer with information, that they were calling for people to like apply for this program where they were going to train 10 food tour guides. And I was like, okay, let me check it out. I went ahead, applied. It was a pretty like rigorous, I would say, process because they did follow-up interviews with us just to show you how serious they were with selecting people for the program. And I did my interview. I talked from the heart. They asked me questions about, some of my favorite restaurants, why they were important to me or why I liked them, why did I recommend them. And I really got to tap into my storytelling side because literally all of the restaurants that I talked about during my interview were the ones that made me feel at home. There were some kind of stories that brought me back to my childhood or something of that sort. And I felt like it resonated with the ones who were doing the selection process. And so I got selected. So I was one of 10 individuals who was selected for this program called Culinary Everywhere. So this was a joint program between, it was Eat More Scarborough, who is actually a food tour company, I would say. And then because of the pandemic, of course it affected the business. And so I guess they used the time to plan for this event like, hey, we should train some more people to actually do what we're doing. So it was a collaborative effort between them and Scarborough Arts. So it was a 3-week program with a total of 4 different sessions. And I'm going to tell you about how every single session went. Like, I'm going to give you like a breakdown, a brief breakdown of what it was like. So for this first session, we met up at Diana's Oyster Bar. So I've actually never been to the restaurant itself. I've only been to the part that sells like this like live seafood that you can buy. So like lobsters, shrimp, things like that. And so it was kind of good to be able to experience that and knew that I could come back and try their food because they have really good seafood, especially like their paella. Anyways, enough about the food. I'm gonna insert some clips for y'all to see as well. But for the first session, it was really to like get an idea of, for us individually, what does a food tour look like to us or feel like, or if we've ever been on one. And I got a chance to hear from the other participants who were involved in the program, you know, just hearing about their cultural background or their experiences with food. And we had a very diverse group. I met people who represented like Asian culture, African culture, Canadian culture. Like they were like it was a very diverse group, and I felt like I learned from everybody because even when we were talking about like our favorite foods, and there was an activity that we did during the first session, I was able to learn some spices from someone. I think it was from Ethiopia that they mentioned, and it was just really cool to see that there are other people out there who are this enthusiastic about food as well, besides just eating it, like learning about culture as well through food. So that was the first session, really just getting to know each other, overview of what a food tour is like. I was a bit nervous, I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit shy. One thing people don't know about me, like I might seem outgoing and whatever, but if I go to a setting where it's like my first time meeting people there, like I'm very much reserved and I just want to observe at first before I start speaking to people. So that was very much my vibe at the time. And then by the end of it, I was like talking to people, I felt more comfortable and stuff. So this training in particular, they were in partnership with 2 BIAs in particular. So they wanted to focus on the East End, so Westford BIA and also the Danforth BIA. So that's where we really focused like all of our gatherings, the places that we ate food from, or the restaurants that we visited, they were in these areas. So second session now, I think this was one of my favorites because it had me feeling like I was on my own little episode of High on the Hog, because we went to a barbecue restaurant and it was so good. I can't remember like what style of barbecue they represented, because you know, depending on like where you're from, like especially in the States, like every part of the States, if they have barbecue, like it's made differently. There's a different technique, all of that. But it was really good. So this place was called Northern Smokes, and just really getting to learn just even the detail in like the type of wood that they would use to make the barbecue, that thought process that goes into it, the kind of process to like make the meat cook so that it doesn't taste burnt or smoky. Like the wood is just to add like that extra flavor, but not for you to taste burnt stuff, if that makes sense. So it's a whole process. um After that, we went to the University of Toronto, and this is where we actually had our session. And this one we went to, it was a culinary research center, and it was 2 individuals from the University of Toronto that specialize in that area. So they help with food research and they work with students for that. So this was where I actually got to learn a bit more about how to do proper research when talking about cultural foods, especially when you're doing a tour, like the kind of prep work you want to do in order for you to make sure that you're giving like historical facts when necessary, also ensuring that you're researching properly, so you're properly like crediting food to certain groups or an area, things like that. um and we also had more food because we got takeaway from a little nice spot called Mario's Pizza. And they are unique because they make a different type of pizza every single day, so their menu changes every day. You don't know what to expect. We had the jalapeno and what was it, jalapeno and sweet corn pizza. That was an interesting like combination. All right, so the third and fourth session now. So these ones really were more about social media and food photography. So this was the third session. We met at the Scarborough Arts like office, and there was someone who, I believe they used to work with BlogTO. He was the one who did the session with us about food photography. So we learned like the do's and don'ts, the ways to take pictures for like the best angles, when is the best time for you to do like an overhead shot versus like a certain angle from like the side of the table, all these different things that any of you who do content related to food, you know, you got to catch them angles. Okay, so we learned all of that in this session as well, but from like a professional food photographer. And just really seeing the work that goes into even a photo shoot day that they have to prep for, like they really put a lot of thought into how they're going to show this restaurant's food that really fits the restaurant's messaging and their brand, which is very important as well. And something that I had to take notes of as well, because sometimes, you know, you just take a picture all willy-nilly. Like, it's good to pay attention to detail. So right after the food photography session, we actually got a chance to like take pictures of, there were some sandwiches that we got from a spot that was in the East End. So this was on Danforth now. I'm gonna put the name of the restaurant because I honestly can't remember. But we got to practice taking pictures of our food, and it was just cool to see everybody, you know, trying to catch them angles and whatnot. So we got into the next session, which was about social media. So this part was important because one thing about the program was that at the end of it, we were going to plan our own food tour. And so this part was to help us learn how to then promote our food tour when it was time. So incorporating Eventbrite, which I know everyone probably knows about Eventbrite. That's where a lot of people usually, you know, promote their events on to get people to sign up, especially if you have like tickets that you have to sell, and then implementing social media to then get the message out there. So that was my jam. I love my social media.
Hey y'all, so editing Maggie here. I realized while editing this video that I completely forgot to mention that after the session, we actually went on the Danforth for a bit, had a mini tour there, and then we went to a restaurant, a Greek restaurant actually. The name of it is Mazzini's. I really enjoyed it because the food was affordable, huge portions, and I definitely have went back at least twice since coming here. So if you're looking for good Greek food at an affordable price, then check out Mazzini's for sure.
And our final session was the logistics part. So this is when I actually felt a bit stressed. I won't lie, because just thinking about everything, all the work that goes into planning a food tour, like y'all, there are certain things that you wouldn't even think you had to think about. And I was like, wow, like it's definitely not just calling up a restaurant and being like, oh, I have this amount of people. Like, you have to make sure you're mapping out the time that it will take you to go from point A to B. Are you factoring like allergies for the food tour? If it's one that involves all kinds of meats in there, how are you going to accommodate people who are probably not meat lovers? Maybe that's a like disclaimer you have to put on your Eventbrite link so that people don't register for it if they can't eat meat. All of these things to think about. And I think personally, because I had gotten some experience in reaching out to restaurant owners through my food series, Kitchens of Toronto, this part wasn't too difficult for me because it was all about building relationships. So that's a big part of like food tours, having a successful food tour. You need to build a relationship with the restaurant owner so that you can paint a picture of what kind of experience you want, you know, your participants to have, and just communicate that with the owner. Also keeping in mind that not every restaurant might want to be involved in a food tour, because sometimes they probably don't need the business or they don't have the capacity to facilitate it. So it's all of these things, just having, you know, extra restaurants in the back of your head to always be able to pull out and add to your food tour if one can't be a part of it, things like that. But this was the part that definitely took a lot of work. And shout out to my partner Bob, who was definitely a great team member for this. He definitely did a lot of work in it. Like, we worked very well together, and our food tour was a huge success. So that is pretty much how I went from doing a food series to now being a trained food tour guide. And I'm just looking forward to what, you know, is going to happen in the future. We still have some follow-up to do because the program has now ended, so we have some follow-up to do with the organizers to find out what are the next steps, pretty much. I'll say that my overall experience is definitely one that I will never forget. I met so many people who I can now call my friends, and I will say, like, kudos to the organizers. Trust me, like, they were definitely there from beginning to end, despite everything, despite the ups and downs that we were facing while we were planning our food tour. They were like 100% supportive. And so I hope that if they do continue this program, that this video was helpful for anyone who's thinking about applying. So the question is, what next? That's a really good question. I honestly don't know. All I know is that I definitely would like to do more food tours, mostly in the summer. I would say is like my plan if I hope to do it next year. Kitchens of Toronto season 2 is something I want to definitely do as well. So hopefully I can look into getting like sponsors, partners, things like that so that I can keep it going. But in the meantime, I have 2 vlogs that are coming up. One that covers a food tour that I went on in preparation for planning my food tour. And the other vlog is about, or vlog I should say, is my food tour. Like I did the thing. So look out for those videos and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.